Public hearing on the Thomas Jefferson High School auditorium and hallway project. Let the record show that all board members are present, aside from Ms. Lauren Myers. The Council Bluffs Community School District is now holding a public hearing on the TJ High School auditorium and hallway project. Dr. Brown.
I'm going to take this time to introduce Mr. John Stile, who will introduce our guest this evening to provide that overview. Mr. Stiles, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Board. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce Roger Slauson from BVH Architecture. He will go over the the Thomas Jefferson School Auditorium.
We did A all right. We did A already.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'll step you through our upcoming project here. So the design scheme be all new, some new finishes in the lobby and then inside the auditorium. Very similar to what we did at AL a few years ago. Just kind of give it an upgrade and new finishes. So there you can see some of the finishes. I guess we'll work left to right. There's a new fabric seat fabric there. The carpet is the big square. The paint colors up on the top, the three circles there. So it's going to be a little bit darker scheme, a little more intimate feeling with not so bright and white like it is right now. So grays and golds. And then some wood accent, wood slat wall that'll be outside of the auditorium and on the back wall of the auditorium. And then some draperies over those large windows, as well as blackout shades. So I'll show you some renderings here. So that's kind of up near the main entry coming in, looking back towards the back. So we'll maintain the white ceiling, but we'll have all new LED downlighting up there. Wall paint will be the light gray with the trim being a dark gray. You can see the wood slat wall on the back wall. We'll wash that with light from underneath the balcony. We will be putting all new doors across the back, as well as the new entry doors into the space. All new auditorium seating. That'll be, it's a black fabric with some gold kind of threads through it. And new carpet, blackout shades on the windows along with some draperies to kind of give it a more of an auditorium type feel. There's looking towards the front. I guess the project also includes within the auditorium, it's all new theatrical lighting, all new theatrical curtains and rigging.
Roger, will you explain about the staircases, how we're going to
Sure.
put those in, and
Yeah.
then the lift?
Absolutely. And then there's a upgrade to some of the sound system components. It didn't have to all be replaced, but just some of the controls. So it'll really have a full upgrade to it. So if you can see just flanking either side of the stage there, right up next to the proscenium wall, you can see a couple little handrails right there. So we're going to get rid of those portable stage stairs that are there and kind of build two stairways in right up near the front edge of the stage. So it'll be, we'll kind of get those out of the way. The other thing we're going to do is take the accessibility lift and move it into what is now a door that you go up a few steps onto the stage. So it'll be tucked away and won't be sitting right out in front of you when you walk in the door like it is now. And then new wood entry doors. Moving out to the lobby, much the same type of finishes. We're going to lighten up a little bit here. So what was the medium gray, or the medium gray in the auditorium will become the dark gray in the hallway, and then the walls will be a little bit lighter gray than any of the color that's in the auditorium. But again, some wood slats and ceiling components that you'll see in a rendering here. So that's what the new entry door to the auditorium will look like. So to your left there is where you come up the stairs from below. Those doors will remain. They're open in this photo, in this rendering here, but we will continue the new paint out into that stairway. We'll put new rubber treads and risers on those stairs, so we'll freshen that area up a little bit. And then this new wood slat type, similar to what's in the auditorium with some lighting from above and a dark ceiling in the immediate lobby there. We're also, as you see on the left side there, there's about 6 or 8 lockers there that the school doesn't really need. So we're going to get rid of those and put in a small trophy case. It can be a trophy case or a pin-up area for playbills or upcoming shows or announcements, kind of whatever you want it to be, but it'll be like a small trophy case. Timeline. So we're in the construction documents phase, so I think that's the orange part there. So we're working through design. We're going to wrap up design at the end of this month. Plan on going out to bid April 1st with bids due on the 22nd. We will review bids from the 23rd through March 5th, make sure everything's in order, everything's covered, and be back here, I think, on the 13th as that next board meeting, I believe, in May. Then construction, we're allowing a whole year of construction. This project isn't large enough that it would normally take that long, but lead times on most of the theatrical equipment, lighting, rigging, curtains, as we're being told, is 5 to 6 months right now. So we'll get started this summer, get all the main demo work done over the summer, and then we've worked with Michael and John and made arrangements for the school to be without the use of the auditorium for this whole school year. So that gives us plenty of time to get materials there. We'll have it done before the summer of '26 sometime. We'll shoot for spring, maybe even early spring, but for sure, by the time school's out, this should be all wrapped up. That one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about the balcony and the work that we're going to do, because you really can't see the plexiglass.
Oh, yeah, good point. So up in the balcony, there's just a steel pipe railing on top of a short wall up there now. The short wall is all cast in place concrete that's part of the building, so that'll have to stay.
Yep.
But we're going to take that, just that steel pipe railing off and put a small, it's probably about this high of glass railing there instead. So it'll be very similar to AL. AL has a full height glass railing. This one will just be a little piece on top of the concrete that's there. And then all new seating up there as well. So it'll really clean that up nicely.
And then we're going to touch up the outside of that, the north.
Yes, the north, what used to be the original entry lobby on both levels, new carpet, new paint, upgrade the lighting to LED, new treads and risers on the stairs. So just kind of freshen that up a little bit. Thanks for helping me through that, Dr. Mahoney. Any questions?
Looks fantastic.
All right.
Excited to see it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Roger.
As with all public hearings, there's an opportunity for any member of the public who'd like to make any comments about the presentation regarding TJ High School Auditorium and Hallway. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? Seeing as there is none, I now close this public hearing.
Thank you.
Hi, Roger.
And now call to order the workshop business meeting for Council Bluffs Community Schools. Mrs. Strowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Kazire.
Present.
Mrs. Greiner.
Present.
Ms. Hardeman.
Present.
Ms. Myers. No, she's not. Okay, sorry about that. Dr. Rosello. Present. Mr. Peters.
Present.
Mr. Tripp.
Here, if you would all please rise, join me in a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. First up, we have, hold on just a second. Oh, it just says, are you still there?
Okay.
All right, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I move approval of our agenda as presented.
A second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Agenda is approved. Next up, we have approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
I move for the approval of the minutes from the regular business meeting of February 25th, 2025 to be approved as presented.
Thank you.
I will second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion regarding the February 25th minutes? Seeing as there is none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next up, we have public participation. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board regarding any matter on the agenda or any other matter they would like to bring forward. Anyone from the public want to speak tonight? Seeing as there is none, we will move forward with Superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Comine to join me at the podium. We have some very special students that we want to celebrate this evening, and I'm looking forward to all of the great news. I see a lot of stars sitting there, so it's going to be a great evening. So, Ms. Comine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and good evening, President Tripp, Vice President Peters, and members of the board. And just like every other night that I get to stand up here, I bring a whole room full of talented students. And so I would like to invite Dr. Murillo and President Tripp to join me at the podium as we begin these recognitions. So we have two different sets of star students tonight. We have our boys bowling and our boys wrestling, and we are able to nominate both groups at both Abraham Lincoln High School and Thomas Jefferson High School. So we continue to have a very successful athletic season. I am going to start with boys bowling. The Abraham Lincoln High School boys bowling team, they had an outstanding year this year, and they finished as the city team champions and the Missouri Conference tournament runner-ups. They bowled in the 2A district meet in Newton on February 18th, finishing first and qualifying for the team state championships in Waterloo on February 24th. And at state, they finished 4th place overall, so a very successful season. So our state qualifying team members to start is Carter Shiso. And Carter was also named the 2A first team All-State. Next is Josh Shamblin. And Josh was also named the 2A second team All-State. Fuller Russell. Fuller was also the individual city champion. Jordan Hargrave. Ethan Puri. Connor Knowlton. and William Kelly. So before we do and picture together, I want to move over to TJ High School's bowling state qualifier, whom is Anthony Wayman. Anthony is a ninth grader at Thomas Jefferson High School, and he made the varsity lineup from week 1. He is also a member of the TJ golf team. During the bowling season, he carried an average of 193, but I was told he exploded at the state qualifying meet in Denison with 658 series, putting him in 3rd place, which qualified him for the state tournament in Waterloo. And he bowled a 616 for his series at state, which didn't allow him to get to the finals, but he has vowed to reach the finals in 2026. So very proud of you. Congratulations. Yes.
Actually, you can just go that way, maybe.
We do have quite a few coaches, so if our bowling coaches can come up.
Are we close enough?
They're tall enough.
I thought that was the.
Coaches, find a way in. Let's see, where are we gonna? How far can you get? How far can you get? Right in here between us. Can you get us all, or do you need 2 rows? I can't. Oh, I know. Perfect. Congratulations.
We're gonna get you those medals.
And just an FYI, I was told that the one student who was not able to be is at National Honor Society tonight, so the coach is going to take his star to him. All right, so moving on to boys wrestling. Again, we're going to start with Abraham Lincoln High School. Their boys wrestling team ended the year at the Iowa State Wrestling Tournament on February 15th with 6 individual qualifiers, the most they've had in recent years. They were also the Missouri Conference Tournament runners-up with 3 individual champions. The Abraham Lincoln wrestling team ended the season with 40 wrestlers, with attendance, grades, and development being focal points this season and also past seasons. So the following boys wrestlers that were state qualifiers are Braden Tanmer, Braden wrestled at the 106 pounds, and he was an MRC champion. Next, we have Gabe Showers. Gabe wrestled at the 113 pounds, and he too is an MRC champion. Luis Avalos Sabalos. Luis wrestled at 132 pounds, and he too is an MRC champion. John Ryan. John wrestled at the 138 pounds, and he is a 3-time state qualifier. Next, we have Cohen Dighton. Cohen wrestled at the 175 pounds. And Trenton Byers. Trenton placed 8th at the 144-pound division. We also have a student that we're recognizing tonight from the Thomas Jefferson High School Boys Wrestling State Qualifier, and that person is Noah Phillips. So as you are gathering together for your picture, I'll just do a shout out for Noah. Noah is a 2-time state qualifier at the 126-pound weight class. So congratulations, Noah. Any other coaches out there?
Lots of cameras out there.
Now it's my pleasure to announce our licensed staff member and support staff member of the month. Our licensed staff member is Shelby Klon, 4th grade teacher at College View. Shelby, please come up. Mrs. Klon is a very caring teacher who works hard to create an accepting and inclusive classroom for all of her students. She is always working to be reflective and open-minded while collaborating on ways to best support her students. Specific examples of Mrs. Klon's dedication to an inclusive learning environment were evident during our recent remote learning days. She actively engaged students and families by creating a poll to gather feedback on the workload and then adjusted her Google Classroom assignments accordingly. To further support her students, she posted pictures of her anchor charts, providing valuable resources for independent learning at home. These are just a few examples of her commitment to best teaching practices. Congratulations, Mrs. Klon. Thank you. Our support staff member of the month is Rinda Evans, Bloomer Preschool Teaching Assistant. We should call Rinda Evans Sunshine. She is always so pleasant with all of the children. She is so patient and is always explaining things to students without rushing them, and in doing so increases their vocabulary. She coordinates our recycling program at Bloomer and frequently sends friendly reminders to do our best for the planet. She's actively involved in after-school activities. She sponsors a game club and teaches children civic responsibility. She is the first to volunteer for school pride activities and parent nights. She is definitely a bright light at Bloomer. Congratulations. And we'd like to thank the Community Foundation, or the Council Bluffs Community Schools Foundation for their generous support for these awards.
Come on.
That's a no.
She's a superintendent. Say no to before.
Oh, I'm glad Mark joined this one.
Her kids are all over the world and countrywide.
Congratulations.
I know I always say it's the best meeting of the month, but it really is. I mean, you see how many awesome people we had here. So keep up the good work. Thank you all again. Anything? Well, what's up next, Dr. Miller?
We have one presentation this evening. Dr. Matthews, if you join us at the podium. Dr. Matthews is going to do a presentation on our early childhood student achievement. It's our youngest learners, and it's so fun, and I'm always so excited about this presentation to see the growth that has taken place. So Dr. Matthews, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and good evening, board.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share student achievement data from our very youngest learners, along with updates on our early childhood programming in general. There have been a lot of exciting changes again since I shared an early childhood update last spring.
I do want to point out that our work in preschool does directly connect to District Strategic Goal 1, which is to improve academic achievement. And while our metric established for District Strategic Goal 1 centers around MAP, which we do not administer in preschool, we do know that the work that is done in preschool really prepares students for that kindergarten readiness so that they can be successful in kindergarten and beyond in that academic area. Before we jump straight into the achievement data, I want to provide you with some updates and context for the work happening in our early childhood programming. After our first full year of infant toddler programming, it is amazing to see the growth and development of our very youngest learners. Not only are they growing, we also grew and expanded our infant toddler programming this year, going from 3 classrooms to 5. This has really been in response to the need of the community to really support high quality birth to 3 programming in our area. A major component of early childhood programming revolves around learning through play. Learning through play is not just about having fun. It is an essential part of how children develop the skills they need for life. It supports growth in critical areas like cognitive development, social skills, emotional well-being, and physical coordination. Play nurtures a child's curiosity, creativity, and resilience, providing a foundation for lifelong learning. By valuing and incorporating play into early childhood education, educators help children develop holistically in a way that fosters a deep love for learning. These photos are all great examples of children experiencing those benefits of learning through play. Now that you've seen a glimpse of some of our children in the early childhood programming, I will provide a little background on who we serve across the district and how we fund them. We have a total of 40 preschool programs plus 3 additional programs we support through partnerships with the YMCA and St. Albert. Our preschool programming includes 30 full day, 8 3/4 day, and 2 half-day programs. The 3 programs at the YMCA and St. Albert through that community partnership are also full day. In addition to that, I referenced the 5 infant toddler classrooms we now have. To fund these programs, we use a variety of different sources. As you are likely aware, the state funds 0.5 per pupil for 4-year-old preschool students. So we really creatively braid some funding streams to ensure as many full-day opportunities for our students as possible. This includes a Head Start grant we have with the West Central Community Action, which will continue next year. That allows us 60 additional slots for 3- and 4-year-old children at 4 of our sites. We also have relied on the Shared Visions grant, which is a competitive grant that is rewarded for 5 years at a time, and it is up for renewal. We are anxiously awaiting that to be released. It has been a little bit delayed on the part of the state, so we haven't been able to submit an application just yet. But currently, we have programming at Roosevelt, Rue, and one of our classrooms at the Early Learning Center funded through Shared Visions. We are also very thankful for the generous support of the Iowa West Foundation, which really provides us generous funding to be able to expand full-day preschool opportunities. We also set aside Title I dollars to provide additional opportunities and special education funding as appropriate for those early childhood special education services. For families not eligible for any of those grants or funding streams, we do also have a tuition option, and we are able to accept child care assistance in our infant and toddler programming as well. Our enrollment right now is 590 in our programming, and an additional 46 children are served through those partner sites. Before we go into the assessment results, I wanted to explain a little bit about the assessment itself. We use My Teaching Strategies Gold, which is the state-required assessment for 4-year-olds in statewide voluntary preschool programming. We believe in the progressions that Gold provides to really make sure that we have aligned programming around standards and objectives, so we use this birth through 4-year-old preschool programming. My Teaching Strategies Gold is going to assess 6 key areas, which you can see listed there on the left: social, emotional, physical, language, cognitive, literacy, and mathematics. And there are 38 different objectives within those 6 areas that the teachers and teacher assistants are constantly observing and assessing, and then providing enriching opportunities so students can meet their full potential in those areas. An example of how this looks across the age band is using Objective 20, uses number, concepts, and operations. This falls under the mathematics domain, and this specific objective relates to counting. What you can see here are the progressions. That red band is representing the 0 to 1 year olds. So you can see there's not an expectation for our infants to count. So there's nothing there. We just mark that as not yet for that area. But then that orange band would be those 1 to 2 year olds. Then where yellow overlaps, it's when they're 2 to 3. The green would be our 3 to 4. The blue is 4 to 5. And then wherever that purple and blue overlap, that's where we talk about that kindergarten readiness. So that is our goal, to get students in that overlapping area before they leave us to show that they're demonstrating that kindergarten readiness. In this specific example, what you can see there is that orange and yellow band, students are going to begin demonstrating some early counting. They might say things like 1, 3, 8, and it's not necessarily in order, but they're showing some awareness that numbers have a purpose and they're using them. From there, when we go into that yellow and green band, so kind of 2 to 3, 3 to 4, we're going to see students, the expectation is to verbally count to 10 in order, and then also to be able to count objects up to 5. So being able to match that one-to-one correspondence with physical objects. And then from there, it progresses to the blue band, and where we overlap with kindergarten readiness. The widely held expectation for this objective then is that students can verbally count to 20. They can count 10 to 20 objects separately. When they count those objects, they know the last number they named tells how many are in that set, and they can also say what number comes next when given a number, such as what number comes after 6. They're able to say 7 without having to count all the way through. So that's just an example of these progressions as we look at the data. You might be wondering what this does look like for our infants and toddlers, so I've included a couple of examples. For Objective 7A, uses fingers and hands. At this early stage, that really means reaching for objects, touching and holding objects purposefully. So making sure we have age-appropriate tools to really begin to allow those infants to explore with their tiny little hands. This really does progress into refined wrist and finger movements, using scissors, stringing beads, buttons, zippers, and all of that helps strengthen those muscles for the writing skills that they will need later in life. For Objective 2C, this one is all about interacting with peers, and it really starts with just simply playing near other children. These two are engaged, there's a song, and they're mimicking each other's movements, so right where they should be on that progression at this age. Eventually, it's going to be initiating play with other children, sustaining play with other children for longer periods of time, just to get an idea of those progressions. So we'll take a look at our student achievement thus far. As we look at this first series of graphs, they are all organized in the same way. They are showing the percentage of students meeting or exceeding the widely held expectation in each of the 6 areas that are listed across the bottom. The gold bars are showing the fall checkpoint, and the teal bar shows the winter checkpoint for comparison. This first graph is showing the students who we are serving who are in the birth to 12-month age range. 100% of our youngest learners are meeting or exceeding the widely held expectation in 4 of the 6 areas. In the physical area, you can see there was growth from fall to winter. We do still have one child who represents that 8% not quite there for the widely held expectation. This is related to a traveling skill, so being able to roll, crawl, or walk. And you can imagine that not everybody's quite ready to do that at the same time in that birth to 12-month category. So we're confident that this will continue to progress. We did see a drop in the cognitive area from fall to winter. We have had a new infant start since the fall checkpoint. So that just represents a new infant that isn't quite representing those skills at the expected level for showing curiosity in the environment. Again, very, very young and new to us in the program. Confident that those skills will continue to develop. For our 13 to 24-month-olds, every one of them is meeting or exceeding the widely held expectation for their age band. For 25 to 36-month-olds, again, we saw incredible growth from fall to winter, with 4 of the 6 areas currently above 80% meeting or exceeding the widely held, with all of the areas above 80% meeting or exceeding the widely held expectation at the winter checkpoint. And you're probably wondering, as we're looking at this, well, what do you do if you have so many children already at that area? And they really use that progression to say, okay, they are very solid in this 2 to 3 band. Let's look at what that next skill is and provide some opportunities to get them ready for that. So that progression is laid out very nicely to allow for that enrichment to advance their learning. Now looking at our preschool data, this includes our 3 and 4-year-olds together. And here you can see, again, great increases from fall to winter in all 6 areas. This is where we see 4 of the 6 areas above 80% meeting or exceeding the widely held expectation at that winter checkpoint. And every area had an increase with a range of increases from 13% all the way to 28% in one area. Math does continue to be our lowest performing area, which is consistent with what we see in our state data, and you'll see that here shortly. But it also was the area that we saw the greatest increase, and I'm really proud of the intentional focus of our teachers every year to make sure that they're moving that needle when it starts a little bit lower in the fall to show that great gain in the winter. The next series of slides will show historical data for each of the 6 areas separately. These will be organized similarly as well, where that gold bar is the fall data, the teal bar is winter, and then the orange is the spring checkpoint. For this first domain, this is the percent of students meeting or exceeding the widely held expectation for social emotional development. Some of the areas or the objectives they're looking at in this area are thinking about managing feelings, following limits and expectations, forming relationships with both adults and with peers. You can see that our data is very consistent over the past 4 years, and we had a 27% increase from fall to winter in this area. For physical development, this includes both gross and fine motor skills. So we mentioned some of that traveling with the infants. That continues to progress into climbing, skipping, galloping, different kinds of physical gross motor skills, as well as those fine motor skills we talked about that are so important for being able to use writing and drawing tools eventually, strengthening that pincer grasp, using clothespins, different pieces like that. These opportunities are intentionally embedded throughout the day, and we did see a 15% increase in this area from fall to winter. In the language domain, we are assessing both receptive and expressive vocabulary. So we're thinking about a student's ability to follow increasingly complex directions receptively, and then expressively being able to group words together to form sentences and have those exchanges with adults back and forth. Typically, we're looking for 3 to 4 of those exchanges to be at that widely held expectation for this age group. We have 13% more students meeting expectations now than who were in the fall. This is down slightly from last year, you may see. We did also see an increase in referrals for speech language pathology to see about some additional services and supports in this area, which aligns very much with that additional support for those especially expressive language needs. The goal is to be at 90% by the end of the year. In the cognitive area, we are assessing things like the ability to attend and engage in appropriate tasks. So thinking about how long a student can sit and attend to a teacher read aloud, or how long they can sit and write in the writing center, those kinds of things. It also assesses their ability to demonstrate flexibility, to persist when things get challenging for them, and to remember and connect experiences and be able to relay those. We again saw consistent increases from fall to winter with another 17% gain this year. In the literacy domain, there are many skills being assessed here that align very closely with our work in kindergarten, including rhyming, beginning sounds of words, letter names and sounds, story retelling, writing of the child's first name, and even drawing, dictation, and invented spelling to convey meaning and begin telling stories through writing. There are a lot of intentional whole group and small group lessons devoted to this area of literacy, and we even use a supplemental curriculum called Read It Again to support this area. We saw, again, steady, consistent increases. This was one of our higher areas of increase with 27% from fall to winter. And finally, our last domain is in the area of math. You saw the counting example earlier. We're also looking at quantifying patterns, shapes, spatial relationships, really covering a lot of areas in math. As noted earlier, this is one of our lower areas. We did develop curriculum maps for preschool in math for the 2019-20 school year and began a very intentional, focused effort in that year. We do continue to see those consistent gains, and again, celebrating that 28% increase from fall to winter. And finally, we talked a little bit at the beginning about that kindergarten readiness, where that blue and purple band overlap, if you think back to the example in counting. So this graph is showing the percentage of students who are demonstrating kindergarten readiness as of the fall and the winter checkpoints. So I'll explain a little bit about how it's organized and what we can celebrate here. What you will see in the teal bar is our school district's percentage of students meeting that kindergarten readiness in the fall, compared to the dark blue is that percentage of our students in the winter at kindergarten readiness for each of the domains. Compared to the state, gold bar is fall, and then the orange bar is winter. This graph really illustrates that comparison. You can see if you look from teal to gold, comparing fall to fall, district to state, in all domains, a lower percentage of our district students were demonstrating kindergarten readiness at that first checkpoint in November. When you look at that winter checkpoint, so again, the dark blue for us and the orange for the state, we now have a higher percentage demonstrating kindergarten readiness in 4 of the 6 domains. And also really exciting is we showed a greater increase in percent of students demonstrating kindergarten readiness in all 6 domains. So even when we started lower, we had a higher percentage meeting that kindergarten readiness by the winter checkpoint across every area. I'm so proud of the work of our teachers and teacher assistants and Ms. Sanders who leads this programming. They're just doing such an incredible job preparing our students for kindergarten and beyond. But the work is never done, of course, so we have some next steps outlined. We have been engaging in ongoing professional development around the preschool multi-tiered systems of support framework, just like we use for K-12, but modified for preschool. That was something we worked on with Juniper Gardens and the Department of Education as part of the opening of the Early Learning Center and piloting that with them. We've also been partnering with the Iowa Department of Education on program-wide early childhood PBIS, which really aligns nicely with our foundation's work with Safe and Civil Schools. We have a continued focus on quality programming. Of course, we know we have great programs already. I shared with you last year there was a new accountability system for rating preschool programs and early childhood programs. It's called IQ4K, or Iowa Quality for Kids. And every building completed an application and earned that rating of a 3 with the intention of now going for that rating of a 4. So applications are being completed and they will be submitted for the next school year. And enrollment for 2025-26 is already well underway. We have sent infant and toddler applications and offers out to families who are returning, as well as the new infants that will be starting. And we will hold our district-wide 4-year-old screening at all of our elementary schools and the Early Learning Center on April 7th, with additional screenings on April 2nd, May 7th, and May 13th for our 3 and 4-year-olds for preschool. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
I have one about the IQ4K.
Yes.
What is the highest rating we can get?
I believe it is a 5, and they recommend that you do it incrementally, starting with that 3 as a baseline and adding to it each year.
Okay.
I just had a couple quick questions. So we talked a little bit about the different bands and like whether they're able to recognize numbers at all or count. How are they really assessed? This is just something I find interesting. Is it just kind of like over the course of several days and then their teacher fills it out?
So it is actually an ongoing observation-based assessment. So the teachers and teacher assistants are constantly taking notes on observations. They're intentional about those interactions. So when we say learning through play, we really mean it. They are very intentional. If they're out at a center, they might line up some trucks for them and say, oh, how many trucks do you have? And listen to the child count, and then they'll take a note on where they are with that. There's an app available so that they can document what they're seeing too, to help them with that scoring piece. And we've actually prided ourselves on having our teaching staff participate in the inter-rater reliability training through GOLD, which is highly recommended to make sure that those observations and where students are being rated is consistent, because it is an observation-based tool.
And then I had one other question. You mentioned that there was an increase in recommendations to speech pathologists. That's a complete blind spot for me. Is that a district resource that we have a speech pathologist, or is it a recommendation to like their pediatrician or something?
It is through the AEA. So
Oh,
they
okay.
work in our schools, in our buildings, and we work with them on that referral process.
Interesting. That was one piece I hadn't thought about. So thank you. That was all my questions. Thanks.
I just want to celebrate the kindergarten readiness and all the domains against the state. That's really cool, exciting to see.
And this is the reason why we need 100% funding for pre-K, because it closes that learning gap that so many of our students start at a lower rate than what the state average is, and yet we see that because of the programming that we have available, the additional resources that we need to help those students close that learning gap. That's critical for us to get 1.0 full-time equivalent funding.
Yeah, good point, because we have the data to back
We
it
have the
up.
data to back it up.
Yeah, the growth you see where we
Yes.
start and where we're sitting already is phenomenal.
And I like the idea of play to work. It would be great, play to learn. And I mean, we should embrace that always.
So when we walked through the presentation, I was sitting and we were, during rehearsal, and I said to Dr. Matthews, send me the PowerPoint. I'd like to pass it on to our donors from the Early Learning Center. And Gladys Haynes from the Sherwood or Susie Buffett's Foundation, she wrote back and said, this is such great progress. I love hearing how you're expanding the birth to 3-year-olds. Congratulations to your staff for the great progress they've made in their ratings and in the children's development and process. Your support has been critical to the success the school district has made with its youngest learners.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Dr. Matthews.
Anything else from the board for Dr. Matthews?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. All right, that brings us to the resolution portion of our meeting. First up, we have, first reading of policies. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the first reading of the following policies. Policy 607, provisions for special education, provision of special education. 629, family night and Sunday activities. 631, providing textbooks to non-public schools. 637, animals in district facilities or the classroom. 638, assistance animals. And policy 804, facilities maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Kozire. Is there a second?
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion from the board?
Yes, those of us on the Policy Review Committee, I have a discussion about Policy 629, family night and Sunday activities. The Policy Review Committee asked to remove the no tests on Thursday from the teachers. My problem with that is that teachers are ignoring the policy. They're having the test, and that's what was brought up to us, is that the tests are already happening. Breaking the policy doesn't mean that we should change the policy. They're ignoring it. Absolutely, the district does MAP, but it's different tests that they cannot study for. With our mental health being forefront for our students, I feel throwing the anxiety of a test on Thursday when they have a family night on Wednesday night is something they shouldn't have to live through and they don't deserve. I think we need to leave in no tests on Thursdays from the teachers. There's no curriculum that's so set that they have to have a test on Thursday. Should they need to do something on a Thursday, like a test, there's a policy that they have in place called the firmament assessment, which shows the teacher where the students are in their classroom. Are they really ready for a test? Thank you.
I've already heard her impassioned speech at policy committee when we discussed it, so.
Have we had any feedback from the community on this?
No, Diane brought this to the cabinet and we discussed it. I don't know if it's, Dr. Matthews, you had some really great points that you might want to share about that. I don't know that we have a lot of anxiety on Thursday with tests, but I don't know that we do, right? I don't know that we don't. I don't know what we do. I've not seen this to be a major, like, every school's doing it and every school's going to have a problem, and it is something maybe we could research. I do know that we honor the Wednesday nights. If an event would start at 7:00 p.m. or later, they have to have permission for that. And that is something that the principals, I've either approved or denied. I mean, Mr. Naughton even called me about the National Honor Society. With everything they have going on, they wanted to use a Wednesday night, but they're going to begin that ceremony by 6 p.m., which makes it then, it qualifies to be able to be allowable, right? And so as we were talking about really what kind of disruption this is, what kind of, concern is there, Dr. Matthews, being our chief academic officer, kind of had some thoughts around it, and so did Mark and Melissa with supervising schools. So I'll let Dr. Matthews kind of share some of those.
Thank you. And I also serve on the policy review committee, and we heard feedback from others who thought it would be appropriate to remove this. One point was that the tests aren't a surprise. They show up at a routine place in the curriculum, so students know when they're coming to the end of a unit and may have a test coming. So if they know they have a test coming on Thursday, they might have activities on a Tuesday night, or they might have family night on a Wednesday night, and they manage their time and figure out, I might need to study on a Sunday or a Monday night instead. For teachers, I do want to advocate for not placing an extra burden on them to have to either pause their curriculum and delay it a day in order to administer a test on a Friday, or try to rush to get through things to administer a test on a Wednesday. We already have a short day on Mondays, so that kind of takes that day out of the equation for giving tests if they want to allow a full period of time. So those were some of the conversations that we had and concerns that were brought up at the table for policy review and then at cabinet.
Questions for Dr. Matthews?
Well, it was more for Ms. Hardiman and Dr. Rosello, since you were there, maybe you're aware. Was the concern with like elementary or middle school or high school, or just all across the board?
My understanding was more of the older, probably aged students, but I think Mr. Hamilton made a really good point, is we're not restricting it any other day of the week. So we may have students on a bus, driving how many hours to a basketball game or a sporting event of some kind. And we don't ask them to make a change, and that is an expectation of them, so.
We also have a committee member who works at Iowa Western and is a great partner with us, and brought up a
Yes.
great point that we have many high school students who are taking college level courses, and Iowa Western doesn't have a similar policy. So we can't enforce it for those classes where we are required to follow the Iowa Western schedule, curriculum, and syllabus as well.
Yeah, just with as many activities as going on, just singling out a single day doesn't make sense to me either. So I agree with everything that's been presented with. How do you give an exemption for one day? The teachers already have a limited week with the Mondays shortened anyways, so.
To be honest, I didn't even realize this was a thing. And I have 2 kids in the district, so I don't know, if they even are having tests on Thursday, so I'm not sure from my point. I don't know.
I can tell you another piece that kind of came from this, that I'm going to have this as an agenda item with the next principals meeting in the business section, is because these administrative and all policies kind of roll around every 5 years. sometimes unless somebody questions something, we have changeover, so we're not always looking at it, right? And, because there's another policy that I asked Diane to bring back to the committee. So that's why it's not on here for review. Because I see it one way and then I see it another way. I do worry that if we don't take this out, then it's going to be, it could open the door for, well, when we have away trips and we travel longer than a certain hour, why would I have to take a test the next day? Or if we leave it in, then we've got to change all of the curriculum maps. And I do think that, that the end of unit assessments, and end of, I guess I would say, end of quarter, that we would then be asking teachers to rearrange their whole schedule, which would mean curriculum department, you would need to rearrange all the curriculum maps and try to count the year out. And it just seems like there is ways in which we can justify a means to get to an end that doesn't add stress or anxiety on students. And so I'm in favor of us taking this out of the policy.
I think another point that is kind of specific to our school district that I remember from my own youth is the fact that because we have late start and early outs on Mondays, that for many classes that already puts a restriction in that many classes will not have tests on Mondays already because of that schedule. And I think keeping it open and leaving it to the teachers as far as letting them, manage how their classroom is going to operate with their testing schedule is a better approach, whereas if we leave this in, that puts an additional, as you mentioned, additional barrier and makes it that much tougher. I do agree with your sentiment that that personally I don't think it's wise to have testing on Thursday, but I think that we need that flexibility within the classrooms as well. So that's my personal opinion.
Well, and I also worry about the strain we put on our educators that are already on, as an educator myself. You're juggling everything and to try to work with already a limited schedule. And I think of, especially this time of the year, now we're dealing with snow days and and remote days, and how does that impact our schedules and all of those different variables. It just adds a little more strain to them that they don't necessarily need.
So when we do have students that have to travel far distances, so we learned that some of our students had to go to Waterloo, which more than likely meant that they were getting home at 3 in the morning. Do we offer those students that may have a test that, regardless of whether it's a Thursday or a Friday, any accommodations because of an extracurricular activity that would put them out later than we would hope, and not getting the proper rest and nutrition to be able to take a test that when they're at their best?
Currently, we allow that to be a site-based, and our principals and teachers work on whether or not that would be something for those students that have traveled or came back late to have extra time to come in and make up that test afterwards. And then there may be some that they take the test when they return on the next day. Because again, the test, you don't walk in and it's, test time. It's something
Right.
they see coming down the track, right? And so we have never dictated to our schools what that should look like, because I do think that every classroom, every teacher, I've never had a parent call me and say, this teacher is making these kids take this test and they da-da-da-da-da. Most of our teachers understand the travel that our kids have, and I think a lot of them work very, very closely with our students and their schedule and have empathy for that.
So it's still, accommodations are made
Yes.
for those students in similar situations. So if we had students that have test anxieties and they weren't able to study properly, we would still be able to make accommodations for those students in that situation.
But I would also say, Mr. Kozar, that if they're struggling from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday
Right.
to take a test on Thursday, that having Thursday night to take the test on Friday, I don't know how that handles the anxiety. To me, it's really, I have anxiety around taking this assessment. How do we put some wraparound services in, get them with the school social worker or the therapist? Let's get there instead of just pushing back the assessment or the academics part, and let's get to the root cause and get them some help and support.
Would that help?
Gonna say that. Yeah, if you're looking at the anxiety, then that falls into your accommodations and your 504 areas, then there are different services that are provided.
Anything else from the board regarding the first reading of policies?
Yes. Oh, no. It was the second reading, sorry. Never mind.
Just a brief question on, I think it was code 631. It's recommending to delete it, providing textbooks to non-public schools. Just, I'm sure, is it because there was a change in state policy? Was it? Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah, they give money for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that is a bit of a change.
Why, that'd be double dipping.
I had one quick question about miniature horses.
It's part of the code. Yes, it's part of the state code, so it gets included in our policy.
State code, is there anywhere in our school district campuses
No.
that could accommodate? I just wanted to, because there are
that
exemptions.
could.
There's exceptions. If you can
Right.
accommodate for the horse, they can bring the horse. We don't have any?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to find out if that was a potential. Someone's going to bring a horse. So, okay, thank you for that. All right, anything further on the first reading of policies?
No.
All right, Mrs. Strasky, please call our roll.
You bet. Okay. Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Ms. Hardeman?
No.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
Ms. Greiner?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
And the motion carries. The next resolution we have is the second reading of policies. Is there a motion?
I move that the board approve, oh, hold on my thingy. Okay. It moved on me. The second reading of the policies as presented. 105, discrimination and harassment based on sex prohibited. 215, Board of Directors, closed sessions and exempt meetings. 216, notification of board meetings. 219, quorum. 231, activity passes for members of the Board of Directors. 304, participation in policy and administrative regulation development. 502, compulsory attendance and requirements. 903, visitors and volunteers in district buildings. 903.1, acknowledgement of understanding regarding search of child abuse, dependent adult abuse, and sex offender registry information for school volunteers. 903.2, authorization for release of child and dependent adult abuse information. 906, community use of facilities. 906.3, political campaign appearances at school district facilities, facility use contract addendum. And 909, public complaints.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board regarding the second reading of these policies?
Yes. I had a question at the last meeting about 304, and Ms. Ostrowski and Dr. Murillo did point out that it already was referenced in policy 202, so thank you for that clarification.
Okay, any other comment or discussion regarding this second reading of policies? Seeing as there is none, Mrs. Ostrowski, please call our roll.
Yes. Mrs. Greiner?
Yes.
Mrs. Hardeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes,
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Next up, we have a resolution for Cenobot L50 and Spot Cleaner 50 with a 4-year lease. Is there a motion?
I move that the board approves the use of the Cenobot L50 and Spot Cleaner 50 devices, including a 4-year lease as presented.
I will second.
A motion and a second. Dr. Mello, could you give us some insight on this?
I'd like Mr. Stiles to join me. This is something we're kind of excited about, and this is a lease to own. We are trying one out first. John's really done a lot of work and research around this. It'll cut down hours for our custodians. So, John, kind of give an overview of it?
Yeah, so an overview, the one thing is essentially a floor scrubber, which can identify the material that it needs to scrub and actually attacks it with that particular, with the proper cleaning. It also can go, the Generation 1s could not get next to corners, could not get next to edge of the walls. These particular units can, which makes them very powerful. The other thing is, as we work with our custodians, sometimes having them ride around on these riders for, at this particular building, Wilson, it's about 4 hours, give or take a few minutes here or there. And so this is going to free up some of their maintenance time. In addition to, we'll get the reports of where the areas have been cleaned. So I'm very excited about it because the long term around this is it's going to allow our custodians to work in other areas that we may not normally get on an evening. And it'll also give us opportunities if we have somebody at another building that maybe we're short an individual that day, we could maybe gather a couple hours from a building that has one of these.
And one of these is what? Describe what it does. It's not. Yeah, but it's.
Sorry, so the Cenobot is the actual floor scrubber. So it's putting down essentially scrubbing compound and it's pulling it back up just like you would if you've seen a scrubber around one of the department stores. The other one is actually just what I would call a very large vacuum. When we demoed this unit, we saw it put down all kinds of different material, including wet or materials that aren't normally your dry material. And it picked up everything with ease, and a material that it can't pick up, it goes around it, makes a note, and then it sends an alert so that we'll know that material's there.
And John, do we program these? Does somebody ride these? What's going on here?
So they do these all by themselves. It's all done through artificial intelligence. Sorry, I wasn't getting to where we needed to. We are using AI. It's Gen 2. They're using high sophisticated cameras and ultrasonic waves to identify what's in front or about. So like I said, what makes this exciting to me is we'll be getting these reports. I don't know if we would take this approach, but they can actually clean the floor when even nobody's in the building. In addition to when we have like the snow and slush, they can actually do a quick run through the building after the students have first arrived. Currently, we have a really tough time getting to those areas.
How large are these?
Actually, they're about the size, so about 3 feet by about 2.5 feet high.
I was just curious where they're going to be stored. Do we have space for them
We have
already?
the space in the custodial closets, and they also self-dock and self-charge.
Just a commercial Roomba.
Is this similar to like the one at Sam's?
That's Gen 1.
That's Gen 1.
Those are much larger and
Okay.
much less efficient. Those ones you had to put a map out and you had to program it.
Right.
This one will actually self-learn. So if you
Okay.
just say self-learn the building and you give it its parameters, it will learn that without having to program.
That is a Roomba.
Presume
Yep.
it has the LiDAR function, so it doesn't bounce into anything, it just
Correct.
maps it all out. See, it's so good, we don't have to strap a teddy bear to it.
I was just going to say, we don't need a teddy bear.
Are these, and I take it these are connected to the network as well, so when they're communicating stuff, it'll send an email?
They
or
are.
something?
They'll be on their own network path, so they'll be isolated.
So they can't be hacked.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going.
Nobody's going to be driving the Cenobot through the schools.
So is our plan to pilot for full 4 years on this, or just a year or two to see how it is, and then maybe expand to other schools?
I'm a little worried about the cost, so I want to make sure that the return on the investment is there. So we're going to at least do a year data, maybe 2, and then look to expand, because they are a little costly, but when we look at the man-hours, they pay for themselves, and John's kind of laid that out for us. So I'm hoping that we get this and really love it, and then look to continue to roll out so many each year.
You had said 4 hours a day is what it's taking off of our custodial staff?
For one custodian, correct.
4 hours for one guy. Okay, thank you.
Super.
Anything further
Thank
for
you,
Mr.
John.
Stile? Thank you.
I do have A question, sorry. What's the lifespan of one of these? Do they even know since it's new? Sorry. You walked
So
away.
the rough estimate would be off of the lithium batteries. Currently, lithium batteries have about a 10-year lifespan. Now, the mechanical pieces on that, what makes it nice under this lease is they're covering that for the first 4 years. So that remains to be seen, but the batteries should get around 10 years.
We're not purchasing these, though. We're just leasing them, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like a great idea.
And the 90,000 is for the entire 4 years. Okay.
Excellent. Anything further from the board? Mrs. Straussky, please call our roll.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mrs. Greiner?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Happy custodians.
Say, could we
At least
borrow
one
them
of
for
them.
home?
All right, resolution carries. Thank you for that. Next up, we have approval of contract for our driver's education services. Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors approves the contract with Iowa Western Community College to provide driver education services.
Thank you.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion regarding this MOU?
Really, I just appreciate the work that Dr. Matthews has done on this. It's providing more seats by us adding vendors, or, that's probably not the best way to call them, but to name them, but being able to have more MOUs with those that will provide more seats for our students.
Excellent. And thanks again to Iowa Western for the continued partnership. We appreciate everything that you do for us. Anything further from the board? Mrs. Straussky, please call the roll.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mrs. Greiner?
Yes.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Last for our resolutions is to set the dates for property tax public hearings. Is there a motion?
I move that the board sets the date for property tax hearing number 1 on April 8th, 2025 at 6:15 p.m. and for property tax hearing number 2 on April 22nd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Second?
Second.
Motion and a second. That was Mr. Peters. It was quiet, but it was there. Any discussion from the board regarding the dates set for property tax public hearings? There is none. Mrs. Straussky, please call our roll.
Mrs. Greiner?
Yes.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
And the dates are set. Motion carries. Lastly, for our business tonight is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we would like to gratefully acknowledge and accept the donation of $1,000 from the St. Patrick's Knights of Columbus for our special education department. We have special education amendment to the Transition Alliance Program, TAP, contract number 20, TAP-12, Exhibit B, our personnel agenda and disbursements for February 2025. Is there a motion?
I move that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Thank you.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion regarding our consent agenda? Mrs. Straussky, please call the roll.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mrs. Greiner?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
And the motion carries. And that ends our meeting. We are adjourned.